Now we have Mr. Ben Worley here with Spiro Carbon, please.
All right, thank you. And thank you for saying Spiro Carbon. There's internal debate within our team itself, whether it's Spiro or Spiro, but I came up with it, so I say it's Spiro, so thank you for that.
Spiro would be like the little dragon guy.
That's right, and Spiro is Latin for breathe, and that's what we really want from our planet. So my grandfather was an educator. He was a teacher, principal, but he was also an entrepreneur. He invested in real estate, he ran our family farm, and he had several small businesses. But his passion was to help kids achieve greater success through higher education. As you see, I grew up in the North Georgia mountains in a very rural area, and for most people, they didn't have a whole lot of choice in what they did when they grew up. You were going to grow up and work on the farm or in the chicken farm or in the chicken plant. And the only way out really was through education, but many believed that they didn't have the opportunity to do this, but he did believe that. And I remember sitting on our front porch. We have this huge front porch like you would imagine in a southern house, shelling peas, because we again the farm. And he told me, he said, people don't have a choice in their circumstance. They don't have a choice in how what gifts they're given, what strengths they're given. But they do have a choice in how they respond to that circumstance, and they do have a choice in how they employ those gifts. And some people choose to employ their gifts of strength or intelligence or power or wealth to benefit themselves, to do things for themselves. But others make the choice to employ those gifts to benefit others, to help raise up other people. And that has a multi-generational impact. And I didn't really know what he meant at the time because I was like 9. But now that I'm much older than 9, I almost understand what that means. So I want to talk to you a little bit today about a couple of people that I know. And this is Sawani. Sawani is a rice farmer in northern Thailand. She farms about 2 hectares, which for you Americans, that's 5 acres or so. Her family, she brings home for her family around $1,200 or $1,300 a year farming that rice. Lately, she's been impacted by longer hot days, hotter temperatures, less predictable rainfall. The price and volatility in rice is going crazy, but even when it goes up, she still only sees 5 or 6% because most of the money goes to the brokers and the middlemen and the intermediaries. It doesn't go to the creator, right? She's heard about carbon credits because it's everywhere and she has a smartphone, but she knows that she has no way to access that. Even though she could make changes that could have a positive effect on our planet, she can't access those because the system is set up to exclude people like Sawani. And this is Guy. Guy's the manager of a small boutique hotel. It's a luxury hotel in a ski resort town here in the US. He's been getting a lot of pressure lately from both customers as well as the industry itself to do something about sustainability. And there are all these terms like net zero and carbon neutral, and he has no idea where to start because the exchanges that exist now are difficult to use, or they're either made for really big companies or they're made for like very expensive subscription services. And so he doesn't know where to start, but what he does know is he doesn't want to be accused of greenwashing because that's almost worse than doing nothing at all. And so Guy has nowhere to begin because the system is not built for people like Guy. You see, the system is broken for people like Sawani and Guy. It's built for large companies. It's built for hedge funds. It's built for the institutional investors who want to go in and they say, we're going to protect these million acres of rainforest because otherwise we're going to go cut it down and we want to get paid for it. And I have nothing against saving trees. But the problem is that the system right now as it stands is too expensive, it's too time consuming, and it's too confusing for anyone to participate. It doesn't incentivize action. In fact, it disincentivizes it. And really, it rewards those intermediaries, those brokers in the middle. Fortunately, Sawani is part of a group that was put in touch with us, Spiro Carbon, through the Ministry of Agriculture in Thailand. And with a few simple ways that she changed her farming, she was able to reduce her methane emissions by 50%. And we use an automated monitoring, reporting, and verification methodology. We use satellites and all sorts of data to be able to verify that she was doing the activities she needed. So we removed that friction barrier, and we were able to create carbon offsets that we sold on the market and sent 80% of that money back to Sewanee. And what that means for her is about a 15 to 20% increase in annual income that's on this digital crop. It's no longer tied to the rice market and the volatility. It's tied to the global carbon offset market, but it creates a dual stream of income from work that she was already doing. For Guy, he was able to access the same thing to kick off a sustainability strategy without having to really figure out all of the details and the intricacies of it. And best of all, because all of this is put on blockchain, it's completely traceable, it's 100% transparent, he has a very strong defense against this idea of greenwashing because he can trace back to the exact spot on Earth that unique carbon offset, that ton of carbon, was created. So the technology behind this, we have automated the monitoring, reporting, and verification. We use multi-streams of data to do that from trusted sources that are publicly available. We take all of that data and we write it on chain. We produce an NFT, so one NFT equals a unique ton of carbon or carbon equivalent saved. So it's not this mass piece. You can trace each piece back, and then we make that publicly auditable. So we do away with the need for third-party certification because everyone can be a third-party certifier. We're democratizing the benefits of the carbon offset for those people that the current system excludes. We're a little bit different in the way that we do the methodology. Actually, we're a lot different. We're the only ones right now who are looking at doing away with the need for third-party certifiers. We're using global standards to do it, but we're able to automate that process and make it much faster, much cheaper, and much more transparent. The other piece is the market we're going after. No one is focusing on the smallholder farmer piece because everyone wants to go out and they want to do huge tracts of land and they want to keep most of the money, whereas we want to work with smallholder farmers and we want to give them back most of the money because at the end of the day, the system doesn't need to be set up for you and me. The system needs to be set up for the people who are the creators, just like our artists need to benefit from the work that they're doing with NFTs. These farmers, when they make changes to help the earth, they should be the ones that are benefiting from that. And why that is a big deal is because the opportunity itself is huge. There are 500 million Sewanees out there. They're the ones that are being most impacted by climate change, and they're also the ones that have the least ability or capacity to fight back. And supporting them are Guy and his colleagues who by 2030 will be spending $50 billion a year on just voluntary offsets. So that's not even talking about the compulsory markets and renewable energy credits and everything else. $50 billion a year on voluntary offsets. So why do we not connect the two? Why should we not do that? Because at the end of the day, not every carbon offset is created the same. And we believe very strongly that if we're looking at sustainability, sustainability means more than just environmental impact. It means social impact. It means economic impact. And when we talk about impact, we're really talking about equity, equality, right? So there are these 17 SDGs, and we look at our projects, and most of ours hit a lot of these different SDGs. But we think that in the long term, both for the consumer and for society as a whole, it's important that we look at sustainability in a holistic manner. So when my grandfather died, he was 96. And normally when you're that old, when you die, you don't have a lot of friends left. And so funerals tend to be very small. It tends to be, a few friends and family. But at his funeral, we had several hundred people show up. And standing in the receiving line, you would talk to each one, and the stories were all the same as they came through. It was, I was kind of a troubled kid when I was in high school, but your grandfather sat me down and told me that I could do better. And he put me in his car and he drove me to the admissions office at Georgia College. Or he sat down with me because I was worried about how I was going to pay for this. And he called scholarships. He called the admissions office. He did this. And now that led me to go to medical school. And now I have this thriving practice and my kids are able to go to college. It's a foregone conclusion. And so we heard this over and over that there was this multi-generational impact. And that's when it really started to kick in. And so the question that I have for you is, what's your legacy going to be? Because that's his legacy. And that was his legacy for this tiny little town in North Georgia, up in the foothills of the Appalachians. But you have intelligence, you have strength, you have power, and you have wealth. So how are you going to use that? What impact are you going to have? What legacy are you going to leave? Can you bring needed technical skills to this fight? Because believe me, this is a fight. We're talking about displacing a system that people make billions of dollars off of. Will you sponsor farm transition projects? Or will you invest in companies like us and others who are trying to displace this system? Or will you just be an advocate for greater transparency within the system? So, what choice are you going to make? Question, we are raising $2 million. We do have commitments for part of that, so we've got about 1.25 left. That is going to get us to around 6 million ARR. We've got around 600,000 in committed revenue so far for this year, and so we need some bridge to get further. We also have some really large deals in the pipeline with both NGOs as well as governments, and we're partnering with several ministries of agriculture in Southeast Asia and South Asia right now, as well as the Middle East. Yes. Sure. Yes, I love it. I agree. First of all, it's highly entertaining. John Oliver's always a hoot. When he attacks an issue, it's always fun to watch. But when we watched that, my team and I watched it, and the entire time I was trying to just jump up and say, yes, we can fix that. You're absolutely right. Because he criticizes the fallacies of the program and the system as it is. And what we're doing is we're addressing all of those issues. So yes, thank you. If you haven't seen it, John Oliver, tonight, look at it last week tonight. It's a great one. Yes, sir. Yes, and that goes to the core of what we're doing. We can scale down to very small because we're automating that monitoring, reporting, and verification process. But even because we can scale down very small, we're then able to scale that up infinitely as we go up, as you generate more and more customers coming on board. Yeah, so we get that a lot when we're talking to the big guys like Shell Oil and some of the others. Although Shell said after a 45-minute conversation where they said, we only do gold standard, they said, well, bring us a project because we want to include you guys in it too, because they like the transparency, and we're trying to beat that standard. So we use those global standards, but instead of using a third-party certifier, we're saying we're putting all of the data, all of the supporting data onto the NFT, and anyone in the world can go out and they can look at our data, look at the publicly available sources and say, oh, yes, that is correct, which is significantly more transparency than you get with the current system. All you get now is a stamp that says, yeah, they did what they said they were going to do, but they're really just auditing the books. Very rarely are they even going out into the field to do the measurements themselves for the third party. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so you kind of lost me at no third party verifier, because as he had mentioned, I mean, most of the buyers are going to demand that. However, they don't necessarily demand the three big guys, because there are at least a half a dozen new blockchain ones that are, getting the process being certified by IETA and some of the other global bodies. You basically are a new registry, right? I mean, that's part of what you do.
Essentially, yes, that is true. But I would push back on that. So the really big buyers, the oil and gas companies and things like that, yeah, they want to see the third-party certification, although they're open to exploring these. Where we're focusing is on the guys of the world, the small, medium business. So the SMBs, hotels, golf courses, ski resorts, they have this need. It's all voluntary. And for them, they understand the value of the story because it's connecting their customers back with the journey of that offset.
Self-certifying using a similar technology that a gold standard would use?
Yes, with greater transparency.
But you're not an exchange or marketplace,
No.
you're brokers.
Yes, well, our key goal is to do the monitoring, reporting, and verification, and to make that our methodology for that and writing to blockchain the underpinning. If we're selling it direct, great. If someone else wants to do it and they sell it, or it goes on another exchange or marketplace, great. We don't care. We just want to be the Qualcomm chip inside the transaction.
Your primary value trend, because obviously you saw my presentation. We're a marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
So your primary value add is the blockchain-based verification, which is a couple other places doing it, although I think you're probably the only registry using non-fungible data.
Yes. Yep. Basically. So we have two sources of revenue, and I'll go quickly because I know we're going. We have transactional revenue where when we help the farm transition project process, and that is paid for. The training equipment is paid for. The issuance of we call them GRIBO, like green bonds, but they're essentially pre-purchasing the offsets that have a time lock contract that come due, and you're basically buying offsets in the future, and they over a period of 3 years they get released, and you can use those internally or sell them or whatever at that point. But the funds from that, the proceeds go to fund the transition for the farm, so that's transactional. And then we have an MRV fee that covers the cost of the data acquisition. So we're using satellite data, commercial satellite data, which we're paying for, and there's all the cloud compute and everything else that goes into it that we get. But that's transactional, recurring on every single offset that's sold. So.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Ben.